Welcome to Unrestrained, the podcast series from CPI. Here you can enjoy conversations where professionals on all sides of crisis and behavior management relax and open up about themselves, their workplace, and their clients. You'll get the latest tips and trends from the best in the business, so tune in often to integrate their experiences with your own. Well, hello and welcome to Unrestrained, the podcast series from CPI. This is your host, Terry Vitone. I'm joined today by my guest, Dr. Marc Brackett. Hello, Marc.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. My guest today is Marc Brackett. He is the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. He is also a senior research scientist in psychology and faculty fellow in the Edward Ziegler Center in Child Development and Social Policy at Yale University. He co-created Ruler and has developed 2 university courses on emotional intelligence. Dr. Brackett is the author of more than 80 scholarly publications, including 6 social and emotional learning programs. He is the lead developer of the Ruler approach, an evidence-based social and emotional learning program that has been implemented in hundreds of schools throughout the United States and abroad. Ruler advances the concept that teaching children and adults a set of social and emotional skills contributes to personal well-being, engaging learning environments, and both greater academic achievement and workplace performance. If we could jump in here, Dr. Brackett, if you could give our listeners a short history of emotional intelligence as a field of academic study and where the Yale Center fits in.
Sure. So emotional intelligence was coined by 2 psychologists back in 1990. Their names are Peter Salovey, who is now the president of Yale, and Jack Mayer, who is a professor at the University of New Hampshire. And so that's where the concept originated, back from these 2 researchers coming together to think through what it meant to be smart about your emotions.
And so that was just an emerging field then at that point, and how did you become aware of it?
Well, when I was younger, and thinking about what I was going to do for my professional life, I was interested in this field of emotional intelligence for personal reasons. I needed these skills, but also I was working on a curriculum for school systems to teach emotional intelligence. And finding this framework was really important for me. And eventually I got my doctorate with Jack Mayer and then worked with Peter Salovey at Yale for the last decade on building programs to teach emotional intelligence in school.
So you guys are really on the forefront of this discipline.
We are.
You describe Ruler as an evidence-based approach that helps schools integrate emotional intelligence into their everyday practice. I'm wondering if you could tell our listeners about the Ruler acronym and then explain how you gathered some of the evidence that supports your approach.
Yeah, so Ruler is an acronym that describes the skills of emotional intelligence. And those skills are recognizing emotion in self and others, that's the R, understanding the causes and consequences, that's the U, labeling emotions, expressing emotions in healthy, appropriate ways, and then finally the last R is regulating emotions effectively. The Ruler is that acronym that describes those 5 critical emotional intelligence skills. And then what we've done over the last 15 years or more is built an approach, which we call Ruler as well, to bringing emotional intelligence to schools. And essentially, Ruler is a set of tools. For example, there's a mood meter that helps build self-awareness and vocabulary around emotion. And there are other tools like the meta moment, which we call our tool for self-regulation, and other tools as well.
Could you talk about the mood meter a little bit and how that looks? I think people would be interested in envisioning that.
Yeah, so the mood meter is our kind of signature tool for Ruler and emotional intelligence. And we actually have an app now that people can download and use to build their awareness. Just moodmeterapp.com. The mood meter is a tool built on emotion theory and essentially asserts that our feeling states are the byproduct of 2 things. The first is kind of our appraisal of the environment. How pleasant or unpleasant is the environment that we're in? So you can think about it for kids, when they walk into the school, are they unpleasant or pleasant? When you get home, do you feel pleasant, unpleasant? And then the second dimension is energy or activation, and that's how much kind of juice you have in your body. Are you feeling -5, for example, that you're about to fall asleep, or +5 where you feel activated? And essentially, what happens is that you cross the two axes, pleasantness and energy, to create these four quadrants. And the yellow, the red, the blue, the green. And briefly, yellow is for high energy, pleasant emotions like excited and happy. Red is for high energy, unpleasant emotions like angry and anxiety. The blue is for low energy, unpleasant feelings like down, disappointment, sadness. And the green is for calm, pleasant emotions like tranquil, peaceful, content.
Okay, and how does locating yourself on this matrix, how does that start to help you?
Well, one thing we argue in our research and also in our practice is that if you can name it, you can tame it. Mm-hmm. That when you have the ability to articulate clearly what's going on for you on the inside, it helps you create a model in your head for your feeling state, and then it also allows you to think about what you need to either keep that feeling or shift it.
So just by having a locus of your approximate sort of emotional state at the time, if you find it desirable to change it, at least you have a location about where you're at right in that moment.
Exactly. It's very hard to know what to do with your feelings if you don't know what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. Right? Upset. What does that mean? Are you down, disappointed, frustrated, angry? Mm-hmm. Because if you can articulate clearly what your emotional experience is, then you can start thinking about, well, okay, if I'm disappointed, that means that my expectations weren't met. If I'm angry, it means I'm seeing something as unfair. And of course, the strategies that we would need to manage those discrete emotions are quite different.
What's the next step in that process?
So the next step is to think about whether or not that emotion is useful for what you're doing or about to do, right? So if I'm feeling down or disappointed and I'm about to do or be in a conversation with you, it's probably not the best mood state, right? To come on this line and be very down and dull and, yeah, it's fine. And, that's going to drive the way I'm thinking and my behavior. Mm-hmm. So I may say to myself, well, Mark, you're about to be talking to someone about this work. Where do you want to be? Well, I think kind of somewhere between yellow and green is a good place, right? I don't want to be manic and kind of out of control, I also don't want to be just sort of like just calm and content. Maybe hopeful, energized is a good word. And then I can think about what do I need to get there. So is it a cup of coffee? Is it a glass of water? Or do I do a few jumping jacks? Talk to a friend on the phone as my strategy.
How would you begin to introduce this concept of ruler to an educator?
Well, in our work in schools, we believe that it's important to work with the leadership team first. So because superintendents and principals are the decision makers, we want them to be able to, we want them to drink the Kool-Aid, right? We want them to feel like this is something that they can't do without in their school district, recognizing that until kids feel safe and valued, until they have strategies to manage their emotions effectively, their school probably won't be as effective as it possibly can. Mm-hmm. So we start with leaders, then we work with our teachers, and then we train them about their own emotions, and then classroom curriculum, and of course, we want to get family involvement as well.
Can you talk about the three phases involved in bringing ruler into a school system?
Phase one really is this idea of making sure the mindset in a school district is one in which emotions matter. That's the first piece. Like, do actually believe that how people feel makes a difference in terms of their thinking and judgments and relationships. Mm-hmm. And then we work to build the leadership teams that are necessary to do the rollout. Mm-hmm. Then we start doing that training piece, and then ultimately we want schools to be self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. So that they're less reliant on program developers and more reliant on their resources internally to have this as a sustainable part of the way the school does business.
I see. So can you go with some of the ways that those metrics might be evidence that supports the effectiveness of ruler?
Yeah, so in our research, which we've done multiple kinds of studies, meaning we've done implementation analyses, meaning studying the quality of implementation, how that influences performance. And we've also done randomized control trials, where we randomly assign schools to receive or not receive ruler, and we track student performance and the climate of schools longitudinally. And what we've shown in our studies is that schools that take this work seriously and implement it with high quality have students who just do better. They have better quality relationships, they make better decisions, and they perform better academically.
In talking about emotional intelligence, you talk about a blueprint that Ruler has evolved that helps foster empathy, and I think our listeners would be very interested in that.
Yeah, so the blueprint is our tool for interpersonal problem solving. Right? When we're challenged, emotionally, it's usually we're not by ourselves, right? It's usually someone said something, or we thought they said something that triggered us. And oftentimes we don't take our meta moments, as I mentioned earlier, to manage our emotions effectively. We behave in a way that's not helpful, or the other person does. And this tool basically allows youth and adults to think through the situation. And then, most importantly, think about the other person's perspective. What that means is it's not just about how I'm feeling, it's about how the other person is feeling. And when we recognize how other people feel based on the way we behave, we often can build more empathy and learn from others.
So now, say that I'm a school and I've heard about Ruler. Now, how do I get started with the program?
What typically happens first is a decision maker, works with our center to, complete a needs and resources assessment. Right? What is the school like? What is the district like? What are their needs? And then we build a proposal for them, based on what we learn and what their needs are, to help get that leadership training and get the professional development they need to do this work well.
Now, have a lot of your involvements been in primary or secondary? Where are you seeing the most traction with this?
For many years, we were really rolling out Ruler in K-8. And over the last 2 years, we have done quite a lot of work in the preschool and high school area. And so we're still actually in the middle of developing and refining our preschool and high school models. But the K-8 is pretty solid.
So if I'm a student and what might be the first thing I experience? Say I'm a primary, say I'm a first grader, and what might I experience on the other side of Ruler? What would the teacher, how would I would be approached and taught about social and emotional learning?
So the first thing that happens in a school is they develop what's called the Emotional Intelligence Charter. And what that is basically an agreement between and among teacher and student about the kind of experiences they want to have in their classroom. And if it's for the faculty, it would be for the school. So we start with faculty and then it goes into the classroom. But as a first grade student, you would be essentially asked, how do you want to feel each day at school? How do you feel when you walk into the building? How do you want to feel in class? How do you want to feel at recess, at lunch? And kids would work together to describe those feelings. And then they would pick a list of maybe a top 5. And then kids are asked very simply, what needs to happen for you to feel this way? So they're looking at the behaviors that they and their colleagues, or peers, I should say, in this situation could engage in so that those feelings are actualized. And then they're also asked to think about the ways that they can help when things don't go right, when you break the charter. What are some effective ways that they think would work when someone breaks the charter or when they don't feel the way they said they were going to feel?
So this is very much something that someone commits to on an intellectual and emotional level when they're presented and they sign a charter that says they'll participate in learning about their and others' social and emotional capabilities.
Yes, it's a commitment. And it's about building community, right? It's saying what's important about the charter is that it moves away from having rules that are very traditional, right? Keep your hands to yourself, no speaking out of turn, those are very top-down, and we want children to generate the behaviors that they think are most important to have a healthy climate, so that they're actively participating and involved in the creation of the charter.
Oh, I see. That's and so that then you would have as many different charters then, I guess, as you would have people forming them.
Yeah, so every classroom looks a little different, and they get more sophisticated as kids get older.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the boilerplate elements you're finding that, say, primary school charters include?
They typically say they want to feel respected at the upper elementary level. They want to feel valued. They want to feel supported, engaged. So there's typically things about their basic needs being met, like valued and supported. Something around like classroom climate, they want to be engaged.
Do you get any pushback from more quote-unquote traditional people that this is maybe has an aspect of something that's unproven or frivolous to it? I mean, how do you combat that sort of reactionary thinking?
Yeah, well, I just go right to the data. For me, what our research shows is that, A, this works, but also there's this basic research on the role of emotional intelligence in kids' lives. And what we know pretty definitively is that kids who have more developed emotional intelligence skills are healthier, happier, and more productive. So to me, it's kind of like a no-brainer.
Is there a takeaway that you would like to leave with educators out there who might be listening?
Yeah. Well, they can certainly visit our website, which is just ei.yale.edu. And secondly, my big take-home is that until children feel positively in school, so they have positive emotions, all the standardized curriculum is not going to get implemented the way it's intended, because kids are only going to want to learn and be in classrooms where they feel safe and valued and supported. So our feelings are that feelings come first, and then the academic piece comes second.
Well, that certainly is a refreshing change in orientation. Certainly from what I remembered going to, say, high school in the 70s or grade school in the 60s. I mean, you weren't pulled for your feeling. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, thank you very much, Marc. I appreciate the interview today, and we certainly wish you and everyone at Yale great success at the Center for Emotional Intelligence.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today on Unrestrained. Please tune in again in November for a new episode featuring Jan Zimmerman and her groundbreaking work with the Watertown Awareness Dementia Coalition. Until then, this is your host, Terry Vitone, hoping your intention